Hello and welcome to RealXperts live webinar. Today our program, 2017, the worst year ever for millennials. It will be presented by millennial expert Jason Parr, who you can see in the window on your screen, and he manages and owns over $50 million in millennial occupied housing. Now he's going to tell us why millennials feel this way and how to help them with their housing dilemmas. Now, for those of you who have seen our show before, you know that our program is live, and we want to remind you that it's interactive, so we would love to hear your questions via the chat room, and we will answer them during our Q&A session at the end of the program. Right now, I want to thank Jason Parr for presenting today and hand over the program to him. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Jane. Welcome all, and thank you for joining today. My name is Jason Parr, and I'm co-owner of JSP Properties. We have operations in the Minneapolis-St. Paul market as well as Southern California. And as Jane mentioned, we specialize or focus a lot of our properties ownership and management-wise with those being related to what the millennial market would be of interest. A little bit more about my background is that I was, from a standpoint of what we're going to talk about today, 2017, why it will be the worst year ever for millennials and how you can make a difference. From a real estate professional perspective, many things go into it, and this is what we're designed to talk about, what you can do for your own business, how you can attract, work with, and enhance the relationship with your clients in the millennial space, as well as what to look for down the road. A little more background about myself. As I said, co-owner of JSP Properties. We own in the Twin Cities market and manage about $50 million in what we consider millennial desired or occupied housing stock, largely consisting of condominiums, townhomes, multifamily properties throughout the area. I also teach and develop coursework related to real estate as well as the millennial topic, and I've been studying now for about 15 years. So something I find really passionate and something that we've developed from our business standpoint. Technology and operations is really streamlined, and found that our clientele find it very useful, and hopefully I can share some of that with you today. What we're going to cover today. We're going to learn about what the history has told us from the perspective standpoint, what has happened, what's going on currently, why 2017 is supposed to be so awful, how this will affect your model as a business and real estate professional, and how you can align your resources and advance your service offerings to attract, service, and retain these kind of clientele. From a historical perspective, looking back, it's always good to understand who we are and who the millennials are. These are basically people born between 1976 and 2014. So 2004, excuse me. So we're talking early teens to early set on the middle age to late 30s. How do they think? This is even more insight into how this specific demographic views different things. Politically, as you can see, have no political affiliation. At least 50% of the demographic has stated that in recent surveys. What's even more striking about this specific list of items is the text messages per day. As you probably know, as you probably use in your own business or personal, text messaging has become a predominant and resourceful use. Effectively in business to some extent, sometimes not so effectively, but just looking at the number of texts on average per day is something that really is of note. What do they think from a perspective of millennials? It goes to how they were raised in the environment in which they grew up. Technology was advancing, electronics and social media was predominant. They were growing up in a market that catered to them specifically with respect to marketing, advertising. Every business that you can look at from a snapshot, whether it be retail, housing, consumer products, really focuses their energies on attracting and retaining this very important demographic. As you can see, diversity is a big aspect of this generation as well. They have been encouraged. It's not all negative. It's a positive mentality, positive thinking in many aspects of this demographic. They have shown optimism in most areas except for two key areas when it comes to real estate. And that's money and finance, which Obviously, as real estate people, that's two very important and critical aspects of what we do. From a positive standpoint, most of these have been met with unrealistic expectations of as they grow into adulthood, into professional advancement and social development. Some of these believe that the high expectations were a result of their upbringing. A lot of these demographics come from diverse family situations, and it extended from their high school into the college areas. Some chose not to go to college. Some have chose college and only found themselves in an out-of-college post-employment, which is not what they went to school for, or an underemployment setting. So that again factors into how they view 2017 as well as the overall economic. It's always great to look at how they grew up from a generational standpoint, and it's always awesome to look back 20 years from today and see how things were and things how they are today. We listed out several items that compares different aspects of living, social, economic, that really factor into the whole real estate model, as well as how this generation views their options in real estate. For example, 1997, 20 years ago, suburban sprawl in many metropolitan areas was ongoing. It was predominantly accessible with land prices less, building costs were less, code requirements were fewer. Now, as expansion has continued, the focus has shifted back into the cities. Urbanization is ongoing. Redevelopment in metropolitan areas is predominant. Remodeling of old housing stock to accommodate modern features, and simple reconstruction and improvement of land areas in the urban setting. This is no coincidence that transportation has changed. In 1997, things like Uber, Lyft, other publicly transportation was not widely accessible, if even available at all. Today, it's very predominant in urban areas and has changed really the landscape of how a lot of this generation views their needs and where they want to live and work. 20 years ago, employers had a position of strength. They could set their headquarters in a suburban campus and ask the employees to come to them. And today, companies are shifting and moving into urban areas where they find the talent for their business chooses to live. For example, in the Minneapolis market, which we call home, there was companies that relocated 30, 40 miles from the suburban areas into very desirable urban neighborhoods simply for the fact that in their business, technology, they find most talent and desirable areas of working are in those areas. So the employers are coming back to the employee base. 20 years ago, baby boom were the driving force behind the social, economic, and housing move. Today, they're still a predominant factor, however it's shifted. Millennials are overtaking that demographic in population, use of economy, and contribution to the overall. By a pure numbers game, we're about equal from a standpoint of baby boomers and millennials. The difference being baby boomers are slowly moving out of the workforce and into different types of housing stock, while millennials will occupy greater than 75% of the workforce by 2020. Looking at specific housing in the 20 years. In 1997, single-family housing was prevalent. A lot to factor in with the suburban sprawl. Land prices were lower. Now, today, multifamily apartments are very popular. Luxury living, condos, townhomes become still very desirable, particularly located around the urban centers. In 97, urban redevelopment or development was minimal to non-existent. Today, you can look across America and you can see cities being redeveloped, resources being redeployed, major metropolitan areas, as people really decide and drive that driving force being that they want to live close to where they work. Some areas, the traffic patterns as such becomes very cumbersome when it comes to the drive time, and this specific class, the millennials, choose to live and work close to where their public transportation is, as well as the workforce. From a cost standpoint, in 20 years, things have changed, no doubt. For example, in the mortgage interest aspect, on average, in 97, the rates were between 7.5 to 8%. Of course, they're going to vary, but on average, today, despite the fact the rates have been indication they're rising. We're still around 3.75% to say 4.25%. That difference can make a significant and meaningful impact into the cost and affordability for many people in this demographic. Home ownership in 97, by direct correlation, was at about 65% in 1997. Today, in 2017, through the third quarter of 2016, it was at 63.5%, which is an all-time low when the U.S. Census Bureau began tracking it in about 1963. It just shows, probably, no doubt, the results of the latest recession, as well as the changing of how ownership patterns and preferences have shifted over time. One final aspect of then and now is the consumer spending. In 97, e-commerce was in its infancy. Retail was still strong. Mall traffic was predominant. Today, the last week holiday season reports show e-commerce at an all-time high. Retail space and mall REITs, for example, are showing higher vacancy rates, demanding lower rents, and as a result, we see a significant amount of retail closings, whether it be Kmart, Sears, Macy's, The Limited. We're seeing a shift in patterns from not only from people's living preferences, as well to how they live, shop, and want to enjoy life. So that leads us to 2017 and a perspective on why it's going to be so awful. This graph demonstrates the four major demographics that are before us today. On the left, we have the Millennials. The next, second to the left, is Generation X, Baby Boomers, and then the Silent Generation, which by definition is the generation before the Baby Boomers in time. As many of you probably know, the Baby Boomers were considered the greatest generation. Post-World War II era, they built families, they built homes, they drove the economy. As you can see, though, from this graph, this is the viewpoint on how each demographic views 2017 as being compared to the prior year. The Millennials, almost 2 to 1, have viewed 2017 as being worse than the prior year. As you can see from the graph, the Generation X and Baby Boomers more closely aligned to a split 50-50 in terms of how they view 2017 as being better or worse. And the Silent Generation, interestingly, views 2017 to be almost 2 to 1 better off than the prior years. So this simple graph, which shows a little bit of insight into how, on a survey basis, the Millennials view 2017. This is given on a variety of contexts: economics, social, cost of living. So it's kind of an overall snapshot in terms of the perspective that's how we're looking at 2017 for the Millennials. Some stats which kind of reflect on the Millennials' beliefs or focuses going into 17. A recent survey by Wells Fargo demonstrated that 74% of Millennials view that Social Security will not be available for them when they reach retirement age. Continuing on that line, 64% felt they will not reach the $1 million benchmark to reach retirement. Some may say $1 million to retire is probably not enough. Depends on your lifestyle choices and where you choose to live. But simply at $1 million, a whopping 64% feel they'll never reach that number. 6 in 10, 60%, show a hesitation to invest in retirement. They talk about this could be stemming from experiences their own families encountered through the Great Recession. Perhaps they saw their parents, their grandparents suffer, incur losses from the housing market or from the investment side. So it gives us insight into how, from a perspective standpoint, this demographic views things. Some interesting facts from a rentability standpoint, going to cost of living and affordability. On average, there's about a $5 gap between what an average renter in the U.S. makes, $15.42 an hour, or earns, and what on average a 2-bedroom rental costs that same person in a typical market in the U.S. So what this graph is saying is it costs $20.30 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom rental in most markets, while that same person is only making $15.42 an hour. So what does it tell us? It tells us as a single person, a standalone person, they're at a deficit in terms of what the housing market can provide and what they can afford. So what we're seeing is more cohabitation, longer-term roommates, longer extended family living arrangements, whether it be next generation. So we're seeing a lot of this changing as in result from the housing costs as well as the income aspect. Let's look at an example. Our friend Bob lives in Dallas, Texas. He graduated from college and works at a local office building. He earns $25 an hour, which to many is a very respectable wage. He has a friend, Jane, who is in real estate and has helped him find, with his friend Carl, a beautiful 2-bedroom unit for $2,000 a month. The downside is that his friend Carl recently became unemployed. So Bob now is left to basically pay the rent by himself, and Carl looks to find a job. So without Carl's help, Bob's looking at on an average cost of $23 an hour just to afford his 2-bedroom apartment. Keeping in mind that Bob makes $25 an hour, so you can see there's only $2 of disposable income available to Bob currently. This is an example of things that will plague or encounter obstacles in many metropolitan markets in the U.S., where you should probably know the cost of buying is sometimes less than the cost of renting. In this example, it just shows that a higher amount of Bob's disposable income is spent towards his living arrangements. How does this affect you as a real estate professional and your business model? Unlike prior generations, including mine, which I'm Generation X, millennials are more apt to stick within their means, which is probably good. Stick within a budget when it comes to purchase price. So example, many of you represent buyers or sellers or are accustomed to negotiations when it comes to real estate transaction. And sometimes that means that if you're representing a millennial in this market, they may not be able to extend that offer up another $5,000 or another $10,000 to reach the counteroffer by the seller. So let's just go into a factor in how this may impact representation of this market. By overall, the millennials tend to be risk averse. Means they can shy away from properties that require a lot of deferred maintenance, commonly called the fixer-uppers. A beautiful starter home down the street that needs a roof. Could be something that the millennials decide, that's just too much right now. I don't have the budget for it, and it goes back to the fact that they could have grown up in an environment where money was tight and that projects like this need to be planned out. Point is, from a representation standpoint, they could be more apt to look for properties that are turnkey in nature, ready to move in within their budget. They tend to want to live near where they work. And companies, as we mentioned earlier, are relocating to attract talent. This is commonplace. It's particularly on the coast when you get a lot of travel time, talking about significant amount of commuting. There's different options available from an employer standpoint. Be prepared to work with that same kind of mantra when it comes to representing these kind of clients. Sometimes some employees get to telecommute, work alternative hours. So you have to be flexible when it comes to represent them in a real estate capacity. Obviously, all of us know that real estate is not a 9-to-5 job, but even more so, being apt in situations where these employees have work and live, they're more accustomed to an access fairly often at different times. So just a point is be accessible, be available. One of the interesting stats we touched on earlier, this is a graph which demonstrates from 1995 up through 2016 the home ownership rates. As you can see on the graph, there's 2 gray areas indicating the recession, one of which was 2001, and the other one about 2008, 2009, which we all commonly refer to as the Great Recession. As you can see, home ownership rates trend up like a nice mountain to reach their peak about 2003 to 2005, where it peaked almost at about 69 to 70%. Then, slowly and systematically have been ratcheting down as we go through the post-recession years to where we're at in about 2016, where we're looking at about a 63.5% ownership rate. That's as of Q3 2016. So we should be receiving from the U.S. Census Bureau the final fourth quarter 16 numbers this week. But we don't expect a significant increase, but probably a stagnant continuation of the home ownership rate. This is a factor. This also goes into the considerations on why the availability of housing stock, given the significant investment by major money players in this space coming out of the Great Recession, as well as what millennials may face in terms of options in the marketplace. How can you, as a real estate professional, align your resources and adapt services to meet this demanding market? One of the things we've done in our business is work with city planners. As an example, most metropolitan areas have public hearings when developers file plans for a new development, new condo building, new multifamily building, and there's very regimented processes that need to go before certain areas of the city for approval. These meetings are oftentimes available for public hearing and public view. A lot of times what we've done is attend these meetings, got to meet the developers, express some thoughts, and developed a relationship with them, as well as the city planners. Because also with development side, from the city planning side, many cities are required and mandated to have a 30-year to 40-year plan with how they're going to marshal their resources, where they're going to expand their properties, how they're going to encourage development in certain areas, and sometimes what public property will be up for sale and how they want to encourage private development. By developing relationships with these areas, these developers and the city planners, you will, as a professional, gain an advantage potentially against others in your industry. You've got perhaps an insight in terms of what's coming down the plan in a certain area that you've had an eye on for redevelopment, which then you in turn can relate to your clients, specifically in the millennial space, when they may be looking to wait up for an initial purchase or a move up in property. This is a great opportunity for you to network, develop relationships, and get information. On the same line, it's never can be underestimated to build relationships within the real estate professional sector. Not as just people you may consider as your competitors, but also on a local and national basis. Keep in mind that this demographic is a very transient one. They could be in Los Angeles one day and have a position for a job opportunity in New York and be willing to move within the next month. So as a real estate professional, you need to adapt and need to be able to have those relationships, perhaps from a referral basis, as well as a networking basis, so you can help guide these clients as they advance in their career and personal lives. Consider buying and selling as a great staple of your business. But it may not be the only way to make a commission. In a lot of markets, specifically when you have high rental or leasing markets, you may be able to receive a commission or compensation by representing a potential tenant in this space. As you approach, work with your millennial client and they decide that renting is their option, approach the building representatives. Could be a leasing agent, could be a developer, could be a landlord themselves, and perhaps at that point you're open to a commission arrangement where you help enter into the lease and represent the client. This does a couple things for you. Obviously, it gives you some income as well as derives a relationship where you can continue with the millennial now and in the future as their careers and lives unfold, and perhaps it's the next rental or it's the next purchase. Going back to our friends Carl and Bob. So Carl had a great run, found a great job in a tech company in San Francisco. So he's sad to leave Bob back in Dallas, but he's even sadder to see the rental prices in San Francisco. So Carl turns to his trusted friend Jane, the real estate professional, to help him find a luxury rental. Jane, through her network of people, finds a real estate professional in the San Francisco market who focuses on rentals, and finds Carl a great Pacific Heights rental for a mere $7,500 per month. So, as sad as Carl is to see the rent price, he's even happier now to have his dream job living in a great city. And Jane is even more happy the fact that she received a referral commission by referring Carl to her colleague counterpart in San Francisco. So this is another example of simply staying with your clients as they go through the process of developing in this market. Instead of a quick sale or a quick buyer representation commission, it may take a rental or two before that happens. But the point is, continued involvement, constant contact, and interest will show forward. A lot of times it recalls aligning yourself more so with the $1 million listing, which many of you don't know is a San Francisco, New York, and Los Angeles-based high-end real estate sales show, or Oz and Harriet, which traditional real estate model and family basis. If you contrast those two things, you have to look at where our market is today. Take example again, Carl, who was unemployed in Dallas, knowing that he wanted to have that great job, but was willing to move across country to San Francisco because he's in that bracket. He's got very few commitments, wants a transient position, open to finding his job, and having an experience. Jane stayed with Carl as part of the network, developed the local and national relationships, and as a result, were able to continue her relationship with Carl as he moved to the West Coast. This is a critical part of it, more so now than ever. For the great period before the Great Recession, job transfers and companies were not transferring as prevalent as they are now. Now it's employers, again, finding the right resources, whether it be somebody from the East Coast to the West Coast or vice versa. So the point is, be willing to adapt your services to meet the market demand. Some other key aspects of expanding the business model. Many of you might have developed very good marketing to a specific clientele, whether it be buyer or seller. Perhaps you can refine that marketing and focus in on more the millennial space, relevant information. There's so much out there right now from public standpoint, from publications and documentation on studies done and surveys, things of that nature which may be of interest to your clients. Send them and share it with them, via social media, technology. Keep them abreast, give them that information to make a decision. Think outside the box. Think back to Jane's example. Jane could have just let Carl go to the West Coast and not even thought twice about it and let him find a place by himself. But she thought outside the box. She realized that Carl's this may be a one-time move, or it could be the first of several moves in his life. Invest in referral building more than ever. This is a common adage that as real estate professionals, as we develop in our careers, your friends and family contacts, expand it out more than ever, not only to the real estate sector, but also to industries that service the real estate sector, because you'll never know who you'll meet, who you will need to meet in terms of representing this class. It's very dynamic, very mobile, and very energetic demographic. Probably the most important aspect of the last two bullet points. As we talked about earlier, millennials receive a tremendous amount of marketing and advertising centered towards them. How you can differentiate yourself in your business is providing relevant but targeted information to this demographic. If they're not interested in a suburban home that's $600,000, then it would make sense to send them a listing for that. But if it's something that is a new development you've learned through your contacts, through your developer network, or the city planning, or things of that nature may be relevant to them as they make decisions going from rental to ownership. And finally, the revenue streams. Whereas a traditional sales buying representation model is built on a commission from representing buyers and sellers in that space, be open to renting and leasing, representing them, your clients on that end. In many markets, as we said, renting and leasing is potentially a higher priced option and more feasible in many markets than it is to buy, whether it be from financing approval, down payment, just to the pure fact of cost and affordability. So the point is, be open to it. At this point, we're going to open up to questions and answers, and I thank you for your time.
Jason, that was great. We do have a question. The first one is, what are some of the big things or millennials are looking for when buying or renting a home?
Sure. Thank you, Caller, for the question. Basically, there's 5 things that we've identified that millennials really truly find as a must or a preference in terms of amenity. The first 3 can probably apply to most generations, obviously location, size, and then amenities. What does the building have to offer, whether it be a pet-friendly groomer or underground car wash or entertainment area. The final 2 are more tailored to the millennial market specifically. Construction, whether it be green or LEED, how technology wired is the unit? Is it there free Wi-Fi? Is there set up for the next age technology? Those are the 5 key things we see as demands within this space.
Great,
Any other
thanks.
questions?
Another question, and we only have time probably for one more question. What are some ideas on how to connect with millennials and target them within your, you
Sure.
know,
Good question.
area?
From a timing standpoint, all of us have developed are ways to make relationships and connections. A lot of times, the use of social media, whether it be a LinkedIn, Facebook, FaceTime, those networking opportunities are a great way to learn connections initially. Yeah, also don't want to abandon it. If you become known for developing expertise and interest in certain areas within your metro area, whether it be represented in a very high demand area when it comes to millennials, that will also make your brand awareness from the owner of a business standpoint, which all of us really are for real estate professionals. So really brand awareness, being identified as an expert in a certain market area perhaps, and then secondly is savvy use of the social media, whether it be LinkedIn, Facebook, is a very good way to connect to this market.
Great. Thank you, Jason. I'm afraid we're out of time, so we can't do any more questions. But for those of you who want to contact Jason, if you have other questions, he's at jpar@jspproperties.com. I want to thank you, Jason, so much for coming in and giving us your expertise in regards to millennials. And this has been Real Experts, which is a knowledge-based sharing presentation platform designed to bring the most timely, market-sensitive, and proven success strategies to the real estate professional. You need to be smarter, faster, and stronger than your competition. Be a real expert. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.